Hey, Rebel Bankers, this is your host, Chris Noggle, and welcome back to the show. Listen, I am so unbelievably excited about today's podcast. This podcast is one of those podcasts that we keep doing and we keep having to redo it. It's not just to make it better. It's because every single time the podcast gets better, and this is going to be the best one for you yet. I'm joined by Stefan Aarnio, and he is with Black Card, but we're going to talk today about this beast. You see how thick that book is? The book, Hard Times Create Strong Men. Stefan, how are you, man?
Chris, great to see you again, man. I heard you like it thick, so I sent you a thick book in the mail.
Yes, I got it, man. It came in this giant thing. I'm like, what is this? And I open it up. I'm like, yes, just how I like them.
That's right, bro.
Well, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the book, but more so not just the book. We're going to talk about what the book says, what it means, and how freaking screwed we are right now, or how amazingly we are, not, that's the wrong word, how we are going to actually see one of the biggest opportunities of most of our lives if you're ready and you understand the principles in this book. That's what we're going to talk about. But let's talk about all of you watching this show right now. Let's talk about you and your journey to becoming a rebel banker. You know, there's one thing we're going to talk about in this book. We're going to talk about how everybody right now has access to all the knowledge. You have access to any knowledge you want in the world. You can know it all. And we are right now the most educated society and the most educated generation ever in history. But there's a huge problem. You see, you guys, every single one of you are devouring knowledge. You're getting educated, but you're doing nothing to apply that. And if you want to become a rebel banker, you want to kind of step aside and you want to rise to the top, you're going to have to start applying knowledge. So you guys got to get a copy of this book. Hard Times, right there. Get a copy of this book we're going to be talking about. Also, you want to learn about how money works. You want to see where all the money is for those real estate deals. Grab a copy of my book, The Private Money Guide. It's got all the solutions to figuring out where all the money is to fund those deals. And the best part about it is how not to ask. Let's get right into this. We got a lot of stuff to cover. So, Stefan, man, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your business, where you're at, and then let's dive in.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Chris. I started out, man, I was just a 16-year-old kid that wanted to be rich and famous with a rock band. So I told my mom and dad, I said, Mom, Dad, I want to be a rock star. I want to be rich and famous. They both said, that idea is horrible, son, but we love you and support you, so why don't you go to music school? So I went to the music school when I was 17, and I ended up dropping out of music school. I dropped out of business school. I dropped out of computer science. And finally, I got 2 poetry classes done, and they gave me an English degree. So I graduated from school with an English degree, and I started working in a call center in the middle of the night, selling hotel rooms to rich people on the phone, making $10 an hour. I was getting depressed with my life because I wasn't rich and famous. My rock band was failing. And I read a little book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It said anybody can become rich if they buy real estate and start a business. And I said, damn, that sounds good. So I started saving up 70% of my money as a phone salesman and a guitar teacher. And I went and started buying some seminars. My first seminar was a Donald Trump weekend for $1,500. And I went and I learned, I didn't know what a mortgage was, and wow, this is great. So I started getting into buy and hold real estate. I started getting into joint ventures. I started flipping houses. By the time I was 28, became a self-made millionaire, was Rich Dad International Hall of Fame. And, what ended up happening was I wrote some books. People asked for coaching and help, so I ended up with a coaching company. And, a winter and a half ago or so, 2 winters ago, I went to the jungle fasting with no food, just water. And I came out of the jungle, and my young salesman boys, 21 years old, 22 years old, said, I don't like you. You're mean. This isn't my dream. I don't want to do this. You make me feel like a piece of shit. And they just said all this like feminine complaining to me, like they were 15-year-old volleyball girls team or something. And I looked at them and I said, what the fuck are you guys saying to me? And I sat these boys down and had a how to be a man talk for 3 hours one day, 3 hours another day. And I said, I never want to give this talk again. So I wrote the talk down into a book in 11 days. Hard Times Create Strong Men was born. And then I sat on it for 6 months because it was offensive. It was rated R. It had sex and violence and nudity, because being a man is kind of a violent thing sometimes, and there's lots of sex and things like that. So I sat on it for 6 months. And then I said, fuck it, and I published it, and it sold out right away. It's been a big hit ever since. And yeah, man, I never thought I would write a gender studies book, but here I am. Never thought I'd be a real estate investor. Never thought I'd be a gender studies book writing guy. And I got the sequel to Oracle which is the hard times for women out now. And I never thought I'd have a book about women and a book about men, but here we are.
That's amazing. You wrote this book in 11 days. Were you meditating
11 days.
When you were out there and you weren't drinking or eating anything, you were just drinking water? Were you meditating too?
I got pretty tuned up, man. I mean, I wouldn't say I was a big meditator, but, you know, I did some prayer, and you get kind of tuned in with the universe. You get tuned in with God, and you're super clean. So you're like a conduit. And I just downloaded from the universe this book in 11 days. And it's crazy, man. It didn't have a lot of revisions. Some people criticize it and they say, oh, he repeats himself a lot. But, you know, I'm making arguments, so I have to repeat the premises to make an argument. So, you know, it is what it is. The Oracle I did in 9 days. So the sequel I made in 9 days. This book I made in 11 days. I got a process, so I don't write books. I channel books.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to be said about that. And, you know, I read a ton of books. I like to think that, you know, every day I'm one step closer to, you know, just answering the universe and just living, you know, with a surrender theory of just letting life take me where it goes. And, you know, when you do that, things do just channel through you. When you stop forcing things and you start just letting things happen, that's how books like this happen in 11 days. And, you know, hey, if it's out in the jungle with no food, that's probably way more, because then you get rid of all the toxins and boy, man, it just goes through you like you did. In this book, I remember when I got this book in the mail, I looked at it, I'm like, I've never read a book this thick. I haven't. And I'm thinking about it, and I set it on the table, and I'm like, I'm going to get to this. But then I started reading it, and I started getting into it. And this podcast was coming up because I just started recently. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I need to know a little bit more about every one of those. So what I think I want to do today is I really want to kind of go into this. I literally have got so many things highlighted in this. Like, this is probably my most highlighted book. And I get so fired up, and I get fired up because, man, it's so true. And the times we live in right now, you know, you, I think, said this to me, and I don't remember, but you had mentioned to me that most millennials don't even remember the effects of 2008 and the Great Recession. Was that you that said that?
I don't know if it was me, but that is probably a true statement. And so, we have young people now who don't even know who Hitler was, which is pretty scary.
Yeah, I almost feel like history class is like gone by the wayside in school or something, because if we all just kind of took just a lesson in history and we really looked back, we could almost see what's going to happen next. It's not hard to see what's going to happen next. You have a section in your book where there's a chart, 1940s, hard times, and they were some hard times in 1940s, but that created some seriously strong men. 1960s, strong men create good times. Those are good times in the 60s, right? Like, I look back, and the 60s were actually pretty flourishing times, a lot of stuff happening, a lot of things going on. 1980s, I lived through the 80s, and I remember it. They were good times, and there was weak men. Weak men, a lot of weak things happen, and I'm not going to get into them because we're going to talk about that. 2000s, when the planes hit the tower and we hit those recessions, weak men created hard times. So that was kind of a whole cycle that you saw there. And now here we are, 2020 in a couple months. That's where we're going to be. It's crazy to think. I just watched Back to the Future. I watched all three of the Back to the Futures. And, you know, it starts in 1986 and it kind of goes into the future, then goes back in time. And it's crazy because hard times create strong men. And here we are in 2020 and we don't have flying cars. We missed something here, man. We missed something because we were supposed to have Nikes that we hit a button and they tied themselves. Jackets that when we pushed a button, it dried it. And our cars were supposed to be flying. Dude, our cars are still running on gasoline. What's happening here? Tell us a little bit about like that statement on how that like bell curve happens there and what you can say about that.
Yeah, well, the cycles of history go: hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And those are about 20 years for each part of the cycle. So the whole thing's 80 years. And this is, you know, your show's about money. It's the money school, right, Chris? Mm-hmm. So if you understand history, if you understand generations, if you understand trends and people and what drives them, you're going to learn a lot about money because, well, you're going to make a lot of money. You're just going to know the trends. So every 20 years, you know, for example, like fashion, 20 years ago, whatever was cool 20 years ago is cool today because the young kids are 20 and they weren't alive to see what was cool 20 years ago. So they literally pull out of the freezer whatever 20 years ago fashion was. Like right now, you know, whatever's cool in the late 90s is cool in fashion right now. Probably 1999, that stuff's coming back. It's interesting because, like, a band like Rage Against the Machine that was cool in the late 90s, they're coming back for the revival tour. And a lot of bands do that. They have a 20-year hiatus. They come back for revival tour because there's that 20-year marination. So 20 years is a generation. And that cycle, it goes hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. That's an 80-year cycle that begins and ends with a big war. And our last big war was 1940, World War II. And sure, we've had more wars in between, but they haven't been the big life-changing wars. 80 years before World War II was American Civil War, probably the most violent American war ever. Like, that was a very, very violent war. And what's coming up in 2020 is we're probably going to have another war. And I am actually leaning towards it's probably going to be an American Civil War, with the next election. Maybe one side won't accept the new president, and it could get kinetic, where people start shooting guns. Or the other potentiality is it could be the petrodollar becomes unaccepted by the world, where several countries, like Libya, stopped accepting the petrodollar, and America went and blew up Libya. Iraq did that. They stopped accepting the U.S. dollar, and they blew up Iraq. So if enough countries at once decide they don't want the U.S. dollar, that could be a real war. So I think one of those two things is going to happen in the 2020. And then the other thing we got to watch out for, Chris, is democracy only lives for 250 years. So America's democracy was 1776. It was born. You had 250 on the 1776. You get 2026. So in 2026, you're going to see the end of democracy, where democracy, like Aristotle says this, masculine republics give way to feminine democracies, and feminine democracies give way to tyranny. And you might see Emperor Trump, where Trump wakes up in the morning and says, hello, I'm emperor now. Or maybe he's going to appoint Trump Jr. as the new president, and Don Sr. could be the prime minister, like in Russia. That's what Vladimir Putin did. He took their democratic process and he turned it into, King Putin. So it's interesting, man. I mean, that's kind of a scary thing. That could happen. And, it happened with Rome. People say, dude, America's a republic. That'll never happen. It's like, dude, did you know that Rome was a republic?
Mm-hmm.
Julius Caesar ended up making himself the first emperor. And I just read this great book, actually. It's called The History of Central Banking by, I think it's Stephen Mitford. And goddamn, that book is great. It talks about Julius Caesar taking Rome, and he was trying to create a state banking system. He got assassinated. JFK tried to bring America back on state banking, got assassinated. Lincoln tried to do it, got assassinated. They talk about Hitler did it. And when Hitler did state banking instead of central banking, well, Poland went after him first. Poland started the war with Germany. So there's a lot of fake history, man. When you look at Napoleon, he did the same thing. All these guys in history try to get on state banking, and they try to create prosperity for their country. And as soon as they do it, the banksters, the gangsters, the central bankers will either send one of their indebted countries to fight you, or they'll set something up so you're in a war all of a sudden, and then you need unlimited dollars to fight the war, so now you're on central banking. So it's a dirty system, man, and that's why history and money, those two things go together, dude. You got to know both of those.
Which there's a lot of lessons you can take out of that, because right now, we're both in real estate. And real estate, in my opinion, is one of the greatest places you can put money. Always has been, always will be. It's the tangible asset that never goes to zero, that someone always needs. But you got to know how to play the game. You can't just walk in, and there's so many, people out there just, rushing into flipping houses right now. Like, oh God, there's masses going to flipping. The TV shows, HGTV. I'm guilty. We had a show on it, but because of those shows, everybody thinks you can flip a house in 22 minutes, and they're jumping into this. They're rushing in, which is creating just a crazy surge in the pricing. And now they're just paying those prices, not even know they're literally walking themselves to the edge of the cliff, and they're gonna jump, and they're not even gonna know that they're jumping. They're just following the herd. So I'm running the opposite direction. I'm running the opposite direction because I kind of have a feeling that because of history, we're gonna repeat, and all these things you're talking about are gonna happen. And I give it the next 6 to 9 months. That's where I give it, because we got an election coming up. One that's got. I mean, look, they're trying to impeach Trump right now. I mean, it's crazy. It's ridiculous. I don't care what side of the fence any of our listeners are on, but it's ridiculous. Whether you like Trump, don't like Trump, what they're doing is the most asinine thing I've ever seen in my life. You're wasting taxpayers' money for something that is pointless, that is never going to prove anything, that is never going to do anything. Why? Well, it's because the system's freaking broken.
Well, they're trying to impeach Trump for some things that Joe Biden did. It's the stupidest shit I've ever seen in my life, man.
My wife's been glued to the TV watching this, and she's big on politics. Like, she follows every little aspect of it, and she briefs me on it and just says she's so disgusted at our country that this is where we're at. This is where we're at. We got big problems. We got, people that are starving. We got, there's so many freaking problems, and here we are worried about spending all this time and money on something useless. I don't know, man. You just talked about democracy coming to an end. Democracy is going to come to an end because we, the people, have found a way to beat it. Like, we can manipulate it. It isn't what it's supposed to be. We're not in charge anymore. They know how to beat it, and so do we. I don't know.
What ends up happening? What happens at the end of democracy, Chris, is the people find out they can vote themselves prizes.
Well, that's what I mean.
And they can vote free grain. In Rome, it was free grain and breads and circuses. And in Canada, where I live, 75% of the population voted socialist in the last election. We just had an election in like October or whatever it was. 75% voted like socialist, like left wing. And that's fucking scary, dude, because like that's pretty much the end. And in America right now, a lot of people are looking at the system. Well, the money system's broken. The central banking system's broken. That's why people are poor, because central banking. And they're trying to fix central banking by voting socialist, which is retarded. Like that's literally like what happened in Russia, in 1917. Russia lost the war. They had a great king, Tsar Nicholas II. He was a great king. Everybody had farms. Everybody had land. They lost the war. Then they went communist, and the whole thing went upside down and backwards. And I'm afraid that that's going to happen in America, man. Like, Bernie Sanders, scary dude.
Yeah,
that guy is a scary, scary dude. And what's freaky is, like, in the last election, 2016, they sabotaged Sanders. Hillary Clinton sabotaged Sanders because he would have actually given Trump a real fight. It would have been Sanders versus Trump. And Sanders might have won, which is really scary. But, we're looking at this time, and it's like, dude, this is not what the founding fathers were fighting for. This is not what, America was about at the beginning. This is the end of America, and we're going to end up with something different pretty soon. And that's scary because if America goes, there's nowhere left to go on the planet. Like, if Canada goes, there's nowhere to go. Where do you go now?
I don't know. It is scary, man. It's really scary. And like when you read through, chapter 1 of your book, the first thing where it just talks about, 1944, the invasion of Normandy, you start talking about that, and that's what created that whole generation and then you just keep going. And I was like, I was excited reading that, not because we lost so many people, not because that was a terrible time, but that was because we were fighting for something. They were fighting for something they believed in. And now, like, you get to that next thing. Right after that, you go after the poem, and then you start talking about today's man, between 20 and 30. I'm like, oh, no. And then that stuff I said earlier, where we're the most educated, but we're doing nothing to apply and take action on what we've learned and what we have. I don't know, dude. It's just so much unbelievable stuff. If I could just get people to read this book, and if I could get everybody to read this book, boy, oh boy, we'd all have a better understanding of kind of the past and what we need to do for the future. But how many people would actually take action, even if they knew the answer? Even if you said, here's the answer right in front of you, slap it right to their head. Would they do anything about it? No, they'd go in their cry room. They'd go in their cry room and boo-hoo because we've made that society. We've made it that easy to just complain and just cry and sit there and boo-hoo you. That's not what wins wars.
In the book, there's a section about subversion. And they talk about demoralization. And we've had 3 generations of communist values now in America, where the universities have pumped like left-wing communist values into the soft heads of Americans. And right now we're at the point where even if you show someone the facts, even if you show them like black and white facts, they refuse to believe it because their belief system is so strong from the university and the indoctrination that they won't even look at the facts. And that's pretty damn scary, dude. Like, I talk about how religion's been replaced with the government. Mm-hmm. Religion's been replaced with money. Religion's been replaced with the universities. And we have this pseudo-religion now where people are believing whatever the fuck they say in the universities, and science, like science that's backed by drug companies to create agendas, is the new like religion. And that's really scary, man, because religion is an important thing. It's what upholds the morals and the ethics of society. And when you take religion out, the morals and the ethics go with it. And Will Durant, a famous historian, he said that never in history have we been able to uphold morals and ethics without the aid of religion. Mm-hmm. So what happens is, you know, that's one of the first things you do when you subvert a country. When you want to take a country and destroy it, you take out the men, you take out the religion, and everything starts to go, because there's no more fathers in the homes, the babies don't have dads, the women don't have husbands, and now you have this subverted culture where they have no morals, they have no ethics, and the whole thing just begins to implode from the inside out. And that's where we're at right now, man. The dads are gone. If you're black, your dad's in jail. If you're white, your dad is probably divorced from your mom or some bullshit. Maybe he ran away. And that's life. And if you're a young man or young woman, young kid from a no dad family, chances are, statistically, I got it in the book, you're going to be a stripper or a prostitute if you don't have a dad. And if you're a man and don't have a dad, you're probably going to end up in jail. So it's not good, man. It's not good if you don't have a dad. It's not good if you don't have masculine influence in your life. That's not good.
You know, and the thing is like everything you just said, like I love it all. And then someone watching this podcast, somebody that reads this book is going to sit there and say, well, you shouldn't say that, you know, the politically correct stuff. And that brings me to this right here from Fight Club, actually. You know, most people are watching this, maybe they haven't even watched the movie Fight Club. And folks, if you guys haven't watched the movie Fight Club with Brad Pitt, stop what you're doing, put this podcast on hold, go and watch that movie and come back and watch this, because you will then understand a lot more. But it says this: a tiger can smile, a snake will say it loves you, and lies make us evil. That is freaking just awesome. How would you describe that? Because that's so simple, and that can be taken a lot of different ways. How would you perceive that?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the problem right now, man. We're in a society of liars, and we see something that's black, we call it white. We see something white, we call it black. And we live in a world now, like I think it's from the beginning of the book you're reading there. Mm-hmm. And we live in a world now where it's just evil to be a man. You know, I talk about Donald Trump in the book, and I say, you know, Donald Trump, if it was 1970, would be totally fine. No one would beat on him. If it was 1980, probably no one would beat on him. 1990, even no one would beat on him. But in the last, 10 years, it's become evil to be a man. And he comes out, he's an alpha male, he's a billionaire, and, you know, he fucks porn stars for fun. He's got supermodel women, you know, that want him to grab him by the pussy. And suddenly, all that alpha male shit is evil. And it's evil for him to say who his enemies are. It's evil for him to say who's wrecking the country. It's evil for him to say these people are criminals, we're going to lock them up. And it's evil for him to just even be masculine and be a man. And so I think that part of the book I'm talking about, even to be a man is evil these days. And it's something that it's a sign of the times. It's a zeitgeist. It's a German word for a sign of the times. And it's something that wouldn't happen before, man. I mean, 20 years ago, you wouldn't even see that. That was not something that was even allowed. But nowadays, I've never thought I would see it in my life where the media will attack its own president so violently. And I always say, why doesn't Trump just start assassinating reporters? That's probably what I would do. I'd just start killing reporters, like Putin style, car accidents and suicides, Hillary Clinton style. But he doesn't. He's a really good guy, man. He doesn't kill reporters. He should, but he doesn't.
You know, he's smart enough to just take everything and realize, and I was talking in that Facebook Live a little bit about just surrendering sometimes and just letting life take you where it's going to take you. He takes all this stuff and he doesn't act on it. He doesn't get mad. He doesn't lash out, which he could. He's the president, right? Every other president has and probably will. He doesn't. He sits there and just lets it all kind of hit him and bounce off, and it makes him stronger, man. It makes him stronger because it just allows him to be who he really is. And people can, the people that are not lying to themselves can see really kind of what an actual leader looks like. Unfortunately, we don't believe in that. You know, like as a society, there's too many people just on the other side. And I think, you know, the Civil War thing, I watched The Patriot the other day, and, you know, I think about that a lot. I think about like what's coming, you know, yeah, the market's going to go down. We're going to have some opportunities, you know, everybody that's ready for this next turn sees the opportunities, but like that's short-sighted. Like if there's a civil war, man, watch the movie The Patriot. Like that would suck looking out in your backyard and you got people killing themselves. That'd be awful. And it wouldn't be like The Patriot, 2 lines of people just sitting there shooting at each other. It'd be a little different, probably way worse. But, you know, and
yeah, you have snipers and drones with flamethrowers on them. Like, I don't think it'd be super fun. It'd be pretty scary, actually.
Yeah, so I'm not really hoping that's going to be the fate of a lot of what's going to happen. But I don't know. I'm just along for the ride, I guess. You have this one other one. I don't know what page this is, but this is such a great statement. It says, man looks in the abyss. There's nothing staring back at him. At that moment, man finds his character, and that is what keeps him out of the abyss. Dude, that is where, like, I know you found that, but that is just perfect. That is awesome.
Dude, that's from Wall Street.
I know it is.
That's Lou Manheim from Wall Street, and he's this old man on the stock trader floor. And I love that quote. I use that quote in, I think, all of my hard times. I got hard times 1, 2, 3, 4. So the series is done now. And every single book, I think I use that quote because, you know, being a man, you go through 4 phases. You find your power first. Your power puts you into darkness. In your darkness, you face your demons. And when you face your demons, you find your ethics. And that's what keeps you out of the darkness. And that's the hero's journey. That's Star Wars. That's every story ever told is power, darkness, demons, ethics. And that darkness that's where all the violence is. That's where the killing is. That's where the sex is. That's where the rape is. That's where the darkness of humanity is. And I think every man at some point has to face his darkness if he's going to become a man. Mm-hmm. He has to face his darkness, you know, kill his demons, find his ethics, and then he can stay out of the darkness because he knows what that's like. And some men get consumed by darkness where they become alcoholics, they become whoremongers, they become you know, gambling addicts, whatever, because the darkness takes them over. But I think being a man is going into the darkness, fighting those demons, beating the demons, and then you got your ethics and you're not going back to the darkness because you already went there.
Yeah, no. Hey, we could go wherever with this one, but chapter 23, that's one of the ones that I like the most. And it talks about money, the economic genocide of the middle class. I mean, and you got some unbelievable stuff in this chapter. So this one I've actually read and I've studied these charts that you've got in here, but like where it talks a lot about the 25 best paying jobs in America, you know, as of 2018, let's talk about that, man. I mean, cause this is real. If this doesn't open your eyes, folks, when you're listening to this, because again, I know a lot of you are sitting here like, what is this episode about? We're supposed to be talking about real estate. We're supposed to be talking about money. Folks, that's what we're talking about. You're just, you know, you're over here on right side thinking we should just be hitting right on it. We're hitting exactly on it, but in a totally different way that you need to learn about, because what you're learning about, what you're hearing about is things that do control the destiny of both the things being money and real estate. So this one talks a lot about, God, some very powerful, scary things. So how would you address that? I mean, the anesthesiologist, the mean salary of an anesthesiologist is $269,600. Think about that, right? That's an anesthesiologist or a surgeon. Let's just talk about a surgeon because a lot of people know of a surgeon more and they think they make tons of money. Now, their mean salary is $252,910. $252,000, right? That's a lot of money, folks. I'm not saying that's not. But how many years do you have to go to school to be a surgeon? How many years?
Like 12, like 12. 14. It's some stupid amount of years, man.
12 or 14 years in school. So that puts you into your, you know, God, that puts you pretty far into life by the time you come out of school. Then you got to go through your residency. Then you got to build your practice. So by the time you're actually...
You got debt. Dude, you got debt too. Your debt is
we got to talk about that. Yeah. Well, that's 12 years of school. What does it cost to go to school to be a surgeon for 12 years? $1 million bucks?
Ask a quarter million bucks at least.
$250,000. So let's just say $250,000. So you got to work basically, I mean, that's insane. I mean, a lot of these surgeons, like when they come out of college and when they get into their actual career, for the first, how long do you think they're working just paying off that debt? Just, literally struggling to pay down their debts.
Oh, dude, it's brutal. Like, Barack Obama, the last president, I think he took those like second term to pay off his student loans as a joke. The page before this, Chris, on 322, I indexed gold to minimum wage.
I got it highlighted.
Yeah, and this is a powerful page because, in 1968, minimum wage was $1.25 working at McDonald's. It took you, gold was $39 an ounce, so it took you 31 hours to make a piece of gold. Today, with federal minimum wage, 2014's numbers, $7.25 minimum wage. Price of gold back then was $1,264 an ounce. It now takes you 174 hours to earn the same gold. So it takes you like 5 or 6 times as long to earn the same amount of gold as it would have taken back then. So if you take that gold and you index it, 1968, in today's purchasing power, the man at McDonald's is making $103,000 US. Yep. Whereas today, say McDonald's job is making $13,000 of purchasing power. So the purchasing power has gone down by 90 motherfucking %. So if you're a guy working for money, you're fucked. You can't afford, in 0 states in America can someone rent a 2-bedroom apartment on minimum wage right now. That's ridiculous. I was in LA, dude. There's tents on the street, people living in tents. There's human feces on the side of the street, and dude walks up.
It's a dirty place, man. That's a dirty place.
It's super dirty, and then people are parking Lamborghinis next to the tent. I mean, we're fucked, man. We got tent town. Like, there's tents everywhere. I got a list of tent towns here in hard times. This is really, really bad, man. And like it gets worse and worse and worse until the average man can't buy bread. And when the average man can't buy bread, that's when you see a violent revolution. That's when people grab their guns. Like, the only way to manipulate a man is you hit him in his stomach or his balls. And the Patriot, I think they kill his wife or something,
yep.
And then he went berserk and killed everybody.
His son, they killed.
There you go. So they hit him in the balls, right? That was his love. If you hit him in his stomach and he can't buy bread, he's going to revolt. So we're like right at this point where it's like, damn, dude, something's going to happen. And an average, honest guy can't make it anymore. And I talk about this in the Oracle, the women's hard times. I say women are competing for the top 3% of men. The top 3% of men are the guys making 6 figures or more.
Right.
And if you want to be a woman and be a stay-at-home mom and don't want to go to work, you need that 3% of men. So you got 100% of women competing for 3% of men who can support you in a family. 3% of men can support families? What the fuck, dude? That's a low number. That's not a very high number.
And it's funny, like, we often look back at like, grandparents, when they made, a couple dollars an hour, they brought home $200 a week at a like really good salary. And we're like, how could they live on that? That was more money than what people are bringing home today. They just don't understand the purchasing power of how that operates. It's kind of like, and I talk about this a lot when I do my podcast, when I speak from stage, I talk about the velocity of interest. And we talk a lot about the volume of interest too. We talk about how banks have figured out how to get all the money. So you go to take out a mortgage for your house. You want to buy a house, right? And your bank puts up a big sign out front and it says, introductory rate today only, come get a mortgage, 2%, 30-year fixed mortgage. They would have a line of people down the street for those mortgages, literally lining up to refinance, to get a new house. There'd be pandemonium. And the bank would be sitting there, the executives laughing at this because they're saying, we're going to get all these people into these mortgages. We have it so that the first 7 years, we're going to make 80 to 85% of every single one of those payments is going to go to interest. They literally just created, and this is part of the 08, 09, thing, but they created such a valuable, like, commodity there. They created something, an investment that they could turn and sell. And they do it just like we assign properties. They assign mortgages. They assign the servicing for these mortgages, and they just keep selling it over and over because they've literally made it so that the people, us, are paying 80 to 85% of all of those payments. Every mortgage payment you make, 80 to 85% in the first 7 years is being paid to interest. What are you actually building? What is your money going to? You're not building equity. You're not paying down your principal. The only hope you have is your equity goes up, which you've been lucky. You've been lucky in this last 12-year thing because you've been in a bull market. What happens when it doesn't go that direction? It starts going down. Then what's going to happen? It's like that's kind of the same thing. Like we are trained to think about how money works, and we are trained to think about how the big lie about money and how it works, because that's not how it works. they've got us all fooled. If you think that a 2% mortgage is a good thing, you better start looking between the lines. Like, it's not. You got to find a way to take equity. How are you going to build equity? How are you going to build something you actually own? That's what matters. That's what you can leverage. You can't leverage a house unless it appreciates. You can't leverage a house with a 30-year mortgage when you're not building any equity in the first 7 years if your house isn't moving up in value. I don't know. I mean, I went long on that, but like, that's just the thing that we just don't know. Nobody knows these things. I do that from stage and people are blown away by it. They're like, wow, I never thought about that.
Well, they don't teach that in school. And, you know, I live in Canada here, Chris, and we have an asset-based economy, which is an interesting term where there's so much value locked up in the Canadian homes right now. I think average Canadian home is $500,000. It's like $550 average Canadian home. And I think average American, last time I looked, was like $250 or something. There's a lot of cheaper homes in America, but Canada's $550 is average home. And I think the average net worth of a Canadian is like $400,000 or $300,000. So like, it's all home equity, dude. It's all home equity. And if for some reason, you know, the home values went down, all the net worth of everybody would go away, and you would have a complete change. And you know what? There's something I talk about, I think, in Hard Times. One of the Hard Times. It's either Hard Times 1 or Hard Times 2. I talk about the Monopoly game. And you go around, you play the Monopoly game, you're buying these green houses, and then they turn into red hotels. And then at the end, there's like one or two guys with all the red hotels. Everyone else is broke. And we always forget about the part in the game where someone gets pissed off and flips the board over and says, fuck you, and then strangles the richest guy. That's called a revolution, dude. and like, you're laughing, but you've probably seen that. Someone gets pissed off, loses all his money, starts shooting the place up. Like, that happens at parties. This guy's not your friend anymore. Four guys play Monopoly, they're all friends. At the end, no one's friends because this one guy ripped everybody off, took everyone's money. Dude, that's coming, man. That board reset is coming where somebody's going to get pissed off, be fucked up like on that movie The Patriot, and they're going to start shooting at some point. And I don't think it's that far away, man. And that's why hard times do create strong men. Like, we're getting there, man.
It's scary, man. It's super scary. And you know, I got to ask you, how did you, like, I know you were tapped in, like, you know, you just allowed it to flow through you, but like some of the stuff in this book, like, how old are you?
33.
You're 33. Like, dude, look, I'm 42. So I don't, you know, I'm not that much older, but some of this stuff is way beyond your age. And you're just like, that's power. This is powerful stuff. How did you tap into this knowledge to write a book like this? That's what I got to know. And maybe that's a self-serving question that I'm asking, but like, how did you do this?
Yeah, well, there's a great quote. There's a guy named Ron Hubbard who he founded Scientology, and he wrote 35 million words in his life. Nobody has ever written 35 million words. The Bible's 770,000 words, just to give you an idea.
Wow.
And Hubbard, the most prolific writer in history, says, write when you'd rather be sleeping. And that is the most profound quote I've ever heard about writing. It's right when you'd rather be sleeping. And with Hard Times, what I did, Chris, is I said, okay, I had the cover made, I had the title, I had some chapters, I had a skeleton of what I wanted to talk about. What is a man in money, sex, religion, politics? And then what I said was, I'm going to write every day a shift. 800 words minimum in the morning, 800 words minimum at night. So first thing in the morning, I wake up, I wouldn't brush my teeth, I'd pull my laptop, I'd start typing. I'd pick a title, I'd start typing. And then the deal was I would keep writing as long as it was flowing, and as long as I was enjoying it, I'd keep writing. So maybe I'd write 10,000 words in the morning. And then when I felt that I was like getting done, I'd write in this mid state of consciousness. So I'm not quite awake, not quite sleeping. Once I lost that mid state, or I hit a certain amount of words, I would stop. And then at night, I'd do the same thing. When I'm drowsy and I'm going to fall asleep, I would pick up my laptop and I would type another at least 800 words. And sometimes I'd stay up all night and do 12,000 words or 10,000 words. And I did that until the book was done. So I did that until that was it, and I pulled out my whole bookshelf of all the cool books I liked, and I highlighted cool parts that I liked and put in a lot of...
Like that book right there? That one's in my... right there.
Marcus Aurelius Meditations. Yeah, and I've read a lot, so I could pull a lot of quotes from memory, a lot of cool quotes. And then, I seeded the book. So it was a process. I did 2 shifts a day for 11 days, and that made 151,000 words. And the key is right when you'd rather be sleeping. When you're sleepy in that mid-state between being awake and being asleep, that's when you access the creative brain. That's when you're accessing God can flow through you, and you can create divinely. So that's how I write all my books. Like I've wrote Hard Times 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's got a 4-book series. This year I put out 3 books, Hard Times 2, Hard Times 3, Hard Times 4. And it's a full series about man's power. This one's about power. And there's darkness, demons, ethics. And it's a full book series. And I've written every single one in the mid-state because the mid-state is where the good writing is.
And you do a ton of podcasts, and you're out there telling this story to a lot of people. I mean, have you ever had anyone backlash that you've told this story, or anyone that's read this, like, kind of come back, or do they, like, what's been the response? Because you've sold a lot of copies of this, and you've done a lot of interviews about this. What are people's thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I've sold out. I'm selling out of the second run. So we just finished a run of 10,000. Selling 10,000 books is really hard, by the way.
It is. It's
Most
very
books
hard.
sell less than 500. A Canadian bestseller is about 3,000 books. And this is, I think I've done 12,500 books to date. And I got another 10,000 coming. So next year I'm going to sell another 10,000. So this book, I have had almost no negativity, Chris.
That's good.
I got 98% 5-star reviews on Amazon, which is almost impossible. I don't know of anything that has 98% 5-star reviews. And I don't get any haters. People read it and they go, God damn, it's the truth. And they might say,
it is the truth.
They might say, Stefan, I hate you. I don't like you, or I didn't like you, but I like you now. I've converted feminists with this book. I've turned a lot of people turn around and they read this book if they actually read it. Some haters won't ever read it, right? They just hate the idea and just won't read it. Well, that's fine. But people actually read it. I have almost no haters. I get more haters on my money books when I'm like, hey, man, I did a post the other day. I said, if you want to be a man and support a family, you got to make $300,000, because that's what it costs to have your wife stay home and have 2 cars and a house and private school and some investments and all this shit. It's about $300,000. That's what it costs. And I got haters because I was talking about money. So when I talk about my money books, I get haters, and people go, oh, men's egos get hurt and women tune out because they're really not interested in money. They want guys that can command money, but they don't give a shit about money themselves. So money gets me hate. When I talk about money in my money books, like Money People Deal or Self-Made or some other books, I get haters. I get no haters for Hard Times. I might have a 14-year-old girl who has no idea what the fuck she's saying talk about some shit because it doesn't say strong people or strong women on the front. That's a bunch of caca. But she doesn't know what she's saying, and she's 14. So, like, there really is no hate, man.
I love that. So we talked a lot about the book. Now let's kind of talk a little bit about what you're doing today in your business. Now, I know you've got Black Card. Okay, you've got a real estate business. How are you, knowing everything you wrote in this book, kind of almost being able to see what's coming? You and I share that exact same sentiment. What are you doing in your business to get ready for that? What are you doing with your money, and how are you going to play this card here? How are you going to play the Black Card?
The Black Card. Well, I have an education company called Black Card Elite Academy, and we got a 5-year program to take someone from zero to millionaire. The whole curriculum is about $150,000 over 5 years. And so we go, oh my God, $150,000. Well, it's about, what is that, $30,000 a year. That's what it is. And I've got some students who've been with us for that time. My first students in 2013, one of them has $9 million of real estate now. So obviously he's a millionaire, right? So, and the way Black Card works is we teach you to get your first deal. And then, so that's called like the bronze program, bronze, silver, gold. And then year 2, we have the platinum program where you'll do a dozen deals in the year, become a professional real estate investor. You're doing 1 a month. And then after that, we have a license where you become a coach and you get your own book of business, and you now speak and coach and teach and flip, and you do everything now. So it's a 3-tier process. It's a 3-step process. And we got guys now who are at the end of that process, and they're millionaires. My top students take home $1 million in net pay. My bottom students are making their first $10,000. So Black Card is pretty cool. It's pretty successful. And we license that out to people who want to have their own Black Card franchise, which is cool. And so that's a cool business. It's online, it's education, it's recession proof. When recessions hit, people need education.
Right.
I have a real estate portfolio. It's good, multi-million-dollar portfolio right here in Winnipeg where I live. I'm building a $800,000 fourplex right now. I just bought a mansion that I live in. So I've got a bunch of cash flow in real estate, and then I'm looking at building right now a turnkey rental company with a student of mine. I don't know if that's going to be successful or not. I got a social media agency as well. Social media is a big deal. That agency is taken off. So I got different businesses, Chris, but at the end of the day, I think everyone should invest in two things only. They should pick two things, and those are the two things. So for me, I invest in my books and my company, and so I buy my own stock, and I invest in real estate. Those are the only two things. And every year I realize I go to the casino with $1,000 and I lose it playing red and black. I'll play red and black at the roulette table. Maybe I'll make 1,000. Most of the time I lose the 1,000. And when I lose my 1,000, I drive home and I think about all the things I could have done with $1,000. And usually I could have published another book. I think, damn, man, I could have published another book. Damn, I could have, got some more Instagram followers. I could have bought, how many customers for my company. I could have invested in a property. I could have done so many motherfucking things. I could have built some new steps at my property for $1,000. And I do that every year because it makes me realize, you forget, it makes you realize again and again, you shouldn't be investing in shit you don't know about. So first thing to invest in is your knowledge, so you know some things. If anyone ever asks you, what should I invest in? The answer is knowledge, motherfucker, because then you won't ask that stupid fucking question anymore. Because if you ask that stupid fucking question, the guy you're asking to, he's going to say, give me the money. He's going to say, give it here, little boy. Come here.
Give your control of your money up. Yep.
That's what he's going to say. So you need to invest in knowledge so you don't ask that stupid fucking question anymore. That's the key. So knowledge, and whether you buy my knowledge or Chris's knowledge or whoever's knowledge, I don't give a shit whose knowledge you buy, but you need to get some knowledge, because there's a saying in I think, Richest Man in Babylon, the man who chooses the clay tablet will soon get the gold, but the man who chooses the gold will soon lose it. And so there's a choice between a clay tablet of knowledge versus a pot of gold. Which one would you choose, young man? And a lot of the guys say, I'll take the gold, but the man with the gold will soon lose it, whereas the man with the clay tablet will soon get the gold. So you want the clay tablet, you want the knowledge, because that's what's going to get the gold in the long term.
That's awesome. I love that. And that's the thing, though, too. So let me just add one thing, because we mentioned it early on. People invest in knowledge. And there's a lot of great programs out there. There's a lot of good education, good knowledge. You can go online. You can learn all sorts of stuff. But knowledge, again, is useless if somebody doesn't go out and apply it. And today I feel like people need to be kicked straight in the ass to get them to actually take action. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Like, I read this book, man, I want to run outside and just start screaming crazy because I get so fired up. I want to take action on every chapter I read and everything I learn. But people don't do that. They read it. They're like, that was cool. Yeah, that's great. And then they go back to playing on Instagram or Facebook, and they don't actually apply knowledge. How can we get people to take action on the knowledge that they learn?
Well, I think that's the $1 trillion question. I don't even think that's a $1 billion question. It's a $1 trillion question. I want to refer you to a chapter here in Hard Times where I talk about Plato in the cave. It's interesting because Plato in the cave. Oh, here it is, page 465. And actually on page 464 it says, will people kill their liberator, the man who sets them free? And this is where, we were talking about haters, right? And I said the people who hear about money and how I make money are haters, because I'm trying to liberate them, and people kill their liberator. Donald Trump is trying to liberate the people. They hate him and try to kill him. Jesus came to earth to stop people from killing and having orgies, and what did they do? They strung him up and killed him. So, when you're trying to free people with knowledge, that's a dangerous job. And this story here, Plato in the Cave, 465, this is an old Greek story. And Plato was talking about how there's a cave, and there's all these men in the cave, and they're looking at shadows on the wall, and the shadows are shifting around. The shadows are from a fire in the cave. And these men are watching the shadows, and they give them names almost like they're watching a TV sitcom. You know, these shadows shift around. And it's kind of like the modern day TV. You're watching Friends, and there's Joey and Chandler and all these motherfuckers on TV. They're watching these shadows dance around. And one of the men gets up, and he stops watching these shadows, and he wants to find the truth. Where does the light come from? So he turns around, he sees the fire, and the fire blinds him because the truth is painful to see. And then he realizes, his eyes adjust to the fire, and he looks up a little higher, and he can see that there's a mouth to the cave, and the sun is shining in to the mouth of the cave. That's even brighter than the fire, and that blinds his eyes, and it hurts him for a bit. And then his eyes adjust. So he walks up to the mouth of the cave, and he sees the sand of the beach, and the sun is shining on the sand of the beach, and it blinds him because it's even brighter. And then after a moment, his eyes adjust, and he can look at the water. There's sand and there's water, and he can see the sun sparkling on the water. It's even brighter. It blinds him for a moment again. And then after his eyes adjust, he's able to walk up on the sand on the earth, and he can see that the sun is the source of all the light, and he can see that the sun is actually the source of energy and light on this planet. And he goes, wow, I can see the sun. And then he goes back down to the cave, and his eyes aren't adjusted to the darkness, and he's blind, and he's dumb, and he's deaf, and he can't describe what he saw. And he comes down to the cave, and all his friends say what a loser he is because his eyes can no longer see the shadows on the wall. And his friends say he's a loser because he can't name the shadows, he can't see anything. They say that's what you get for going up to the surface, and they chastise him, and they say that's such a horrible thing you did for leaving the cave. And then what ends up happening is, you know, Plato asks at the end, he says, and if he ended up telling them the truth, that the sun was where all the energy came from and that was the real thing, would they surely kill him? And the answer is they surely would kill him if he told the truth. So the answer to the story or the question you had there, Chris, is telling the truth is dangerous, bro. You know, a book like this could get me killed.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question.
It could, man. I mean, if the regime changes and things aren't, truth is zero value, like, it's good it's in a book, because being in a book, 1% of people buy books, 80% of books don't get read that are purchased. So this is a safe thing because it's in a book. But when you start telling the truth and you start liberating people, the people will turn on you that you're trying to save and try to kill you. Mm-hmm. Right? And you see it all the time with real estate seminars. You're trying to help people, then you got some broke motherfuckers attacking you because they're afraid. You know, they're afraid that you took their, I had a guy today, I sold him a $3,000 class. Today he wakes up, I can't do it, I need a refund, oh my God. And, you know, this guy is freaking out. Well, I'm trying to liberate you, bro. I'm showing you how to get out. Well, he doesn't want to be out.
Right.
You know, it's like Stockholm syndrome. You know, maybe the girl likes being kidnapped. You know, like, I mean, people, you're laughing, but that's the truth. Like, you know, a lot of these things you look at, it's like, well, maybe they like being imprisoned. Maybe they like being kidnapped. Maybe they like being abused. And that's kind of a fucked up thing to say, but it's the truth. People do like their enslavement. They like their enslavers. And when you come to liberate them, you're the bad guy.
Yeah, that's true. But man, there's a lot of truth in that. But you're right. Like, the knowledge in this book could get you killed. If this went out public and got in too many people's hands, it probably wouldn't be good for you, because you'd liberate way too many people and you'd tell the truth, and people don't want people to know the truth. You take power away from people when you tell the truth, and that's a tough thing. You know, and I'm out there kind of doing something very similar with money, teaching people the truth about money, the secrets of the wealthy, the secrets of the millionaires and the billionaires, and how they use money, and how we're taught to use money a completely different way, because that's what we've been taught our whole life, to be slaves. We've been taught to be on the financial hamster wheel in financial slavery. If you don't believe that, you just need to open your freaking eyes and realize what's going on right now. Because what's going on right now is we are taught to give up our good dollars today to get paid back with weaker dollars and give our control of all of our money to someone else. And we just think that it's okay. It's okay to do that. Here, take my control away. And I'm trying to change that, but you know what? The same thing, this book could get you killed. My teachings and what I'm doing and what I'm going to be doing is probably something that could get me killed too. But you know what? You got to stand up for what you believe in, right? That's what you got to do.
Yeah, man. I mean, you got to fight for your right to party. That's what the Beastie Boys said.
Yes.
You got to fight for your right. Party.
Oh, that's a good one, man. That's a good one. So during this journey that you've been on, from the days where you're sitting there in the middle of the night making those phone calls for $10 an hour, like what has been your biggest internal obstacle that you've had to face going from there to where you're at today?
Myself.
Yourself. Your biggest internal obstacle.
Myself. Yeah.
Oh, yourself is your answer.
Myself. Yeah. My own ego, This last year I went on a 40-day water fast to the jungle, and I had cancer, Chris. I thought I was going to die.
I remember you told me.
And my doctor told me I'd be dead in 2 weeks if I went to the jungle, and I went anyways. So it took some big balls to go to the jungle, because a lot of people, I think, would just go on chemotherapy and listen to their doctor. And I said, fuck you, doctor, I'm going to the jungle. And I went and fasted in the jungle for 40 days. And day 43, man, I had a mental breakdown, like literally going insane. And it was either go to the mental institution or find God. And I found God. And what happened in that moment is my ego shattered. What I thought I was could no longer exist. And my ego imploded. It broke down. And that was a great moment because it was a spiritual awakening. And I think our ego, our self-construct of what we think we are, holds a lot of us back, right? Our identity, or whatever the fuck you think your identity is. And a lot of people, I think, who become very successful have an ego death at some point where their idea of what they are collapses. You'll hear the story about a guy who's trying to be a millionaire. He's a millionaire, loses everything, and then he becomes a billionaire after. And that's probably an ego death when he has to sell his house and sell his cars and loses everything. That's his ego dying. And then out of that ashes, he becomes a phoenix because he's no longer attached to the things that used to hold him back, right? A lot of religions in the world, they'll make you give away all your possessions and you'll get rid of everything. And that's, there's an ego death in that. So, for me, it's really been, it's interesting. Like Black Card, my company today, is really cool. I renamed it Black Card this year, the jungle, because I thought I was going to be fucking dead, Chris. I thought I was going to be dead, so I was setting it up so it could run without me. And I started licensing. I came with a licensing program so other people could run the company and they could make money. Well, dude, when my ego was in charge, I wanted to keep it all for myself. And now I've realized, I had ego death. I'm like, well, let's spread this out and disseminate it everywhere. Well, that's a way smarter business decision, but my ego was holding me back. So, I think the ego for me has been a huge problem. It's good because it gets you started. Your ego is what makes you take a risk, but it also will stop you at some point, strangle you and kill you. So the ego death, I talk about that in Hard Times too. That's what that book's about, is the breakdown of the self and the breakdown of the ego. And I think that's one thing that holds a lot of people back, especially the middle class. Middle class is attached to their house, attached to their motherfucking car they don't own, and they're afraid of losing it. And I'm like, bro, so fucking lose it.
Yeah, you say that
cares?
In this book too. You mentioned that in this book.
What's that?
I thought in this book you mentioned, like, lose it, go bankrupt. I think it's a story. Was it your dad or?
My dad, yeah. I was like, Dad, my dad called me the other day. He says, I'm going to lose my land to the tax auction. I haven't paid my taxes. How can I save it? I said, pay your fucking taxes. Like, dude, you can't get around the tax government. They're gonna take your shit. Well, of course they're going to take your shit because they're the government. Mm-hmm. So I said, dude, like, pay your taxes. And you know what? Go bankrupt. That's not the worst thing in the world. We live in a great country where it's great to be poor. It's great to be bankrupt. It's almost better. I just paid like a $35,000 tax bill the other day. I wanted to kill myself. $35,000 in this tax, $25,000 in this other tax. I was like, God damn it. That's like, what is that? Like $60,000 in taxes. Man, that's bullshit. That's fucking bullshit. That's like a quarterly thing or whatever. It's a lot of fucking tax, man. And if you're bankrupt, if you're poor, you don't got to pay. So this is a great country, man. Great country to be poor in. Great country to be down and out. But, you know, rich and poor, man. The rich don't own anything. The poor don't own anything. And the middle class with their ego and their car and the little picket fence and their whatever the fuck they got, those guys, I think getting rid of the ego and challenging what you are, I think, is the biggest thing that makes people win or lose in this life.
Wow, that's a great way. That's probably the best answer I've ever gotten to that question. When I ask people what your biggest internal obstacle is, and when you said myself, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's what I mean, yourself, and you're saying no, that's my problem, myself, and the way you broke that down is awesome, and I love it. So if somebody wants to grab a copy of this book or learn more about Black Card or learn more about you, how do they find this? What's the best way?
HardTimesStrongMen.com. That's HardTimesStrongMen.com to get Hard Times. And if they want to go to Black Card, it's Black Card, the letter U, like university, blackcardu.com. And if they just want to creep my pictures, they can go to Stefan Aarnio on Instagram, Stefan Aarnio, my name, or StefanAarnio.com. Yeah, man, I mean, it's Black Card's not for pussies. If you're a pussy, don't call us. But if you're serious, you want to change your life, come on over. And if you're a pussy, you can get Hard Times, and maybe it'll unpussify you, and then you can come to Black Card. Who knows?
I think we should just end it right on that. That is perfect.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's good. Well, we've been trying to make this happen over and over, and I'm so glad we finally did. And this was epic, man. I can't wait to get this episode. I'm literally going to have this expedited so this episode's out there because people need to hear this. They need the truth, and you just delivered it. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Chris. And send it to my guys too. We'll send out the clips. We'll put clips out. We'll promote you. And bring Chris's brand to new heights, man.
Absolutely. All right. So for all of you checking this episode, man, that was some raw and uncensored golden nuggets. So you guys now need to get started on your journey to becoming a rebel banker. Take action. Go out there and make shit happen. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Real Estate Money School. We'll catch you the next time.